If you want to improve your sleep quality, increase your energy, become a morning person, and deal with afternoon tiredness, worry less about sleep. Listen on to understand why. I'm Sharif Yunus with Dr. Kevin Majors. This is The Golden Hour. So we got, Kevin, this was like our most questions yet.
Yeah.
Last time we promised some topics that we were going to talk through the illusion of simultaneity, which we brought up very briefly last time, to talk about sleep, which we got tons of questions on. Seems like a topic people are very interested in these days, and to talk through emotions. But emotions, I think, just because we have a lot of stuff on sleep, emotions we'll put off for next week. So if you have any questions on that, please let us know, because there's a lot of interesting stuff to go into. But this time we'll be focusing on sleep. But before we start on sleep, Kevin, you had something that you wanted to present.
Briefly, yes, sure. Thank you. So I want to talk about the this prop that I like to use for the illusion of simultaneity. And what we're talking about there is the sense that sometimes we have when there's a lot of things to do that we have to do. We feel like we have to do them all at once. And often that's what's happening when we're overwhelmed. That just feels like everything. Okay, so if I think of like the 5 things I have to do, big things this week, and I'm listing them off, and say that I'm, each of them I'm just putting on a note card. So, and as I'm doing the note card, these are all the tasks that I have to do. Yeah. And then I put them all together, and it's like, wow, it's just a ton of stuff. And so it's just completely overwhelming. So there's, all these things on top of me, and how am I ever going to get to them? But that's the illusion of simultaneity. We're looking at all these tasks as if they're on top of each other, as if each of them has to be done right away. Mm-hmm. So what you need to do is shift the axis of your perspective. And then you can see that, okay, there's actually all this time in between them. So I have something to do today, and then there's this other project due later today, and then this one's on Wednesday morning. So you just end up seeing that, okay, there's all this time in between my tasks. So having a bigger sense of your schedule and where you're going to fit in hours to work on things, to do the number of golden hours on each project, gives you a great sense of peace, because it overcomes this potentially powerful illusion. But it is very often at work whenever we're feeling overwhelmed.
Okay. So then what is the solution there?
Is instead looking at a view of the schedule for the week or for the day, depending on what time frame is making you feel overwhelmed, so that you can see then how much time do I actually have in between things. But honestly, when it's occurred to me personally at times, I just feel like, oh, there's so much to do. Just remembering the shifting of the axis has helped a lot. So like, okay, now get a sense of how much time is in between things. Mm-hmm. And they're not all due simultaneously.
Right. So how does that relate to like reframing mindfulness challenge, which we're always coming back to? Would you say that's a challenge of order?
Exactly. So what you're trying to do is to see, when you feel overwhelmed, mm-hmm. what is it an opportunity to practice? And mm-hmm. it's an opportunity to really practice putting order into your schedule. So that you can make sure that the priorities are set and that what needs to be done gets done, and that you have enough time to do it. So order is actually order gives us peace. Peace is famously the tranquility of order.
So yeah, you love that.
I love that line. Yeah. So if you want that tranquility, you need not fewer things to do, but greater order in doing them. Mm. And you may have to say no to some things too, but that becomes clear once you see what's realistic in terms of a schedule.
Yeah.
Make it real.
Okay. That's awesome.
Sleep. Let's talk about sleep.
So So there are, we got a lot of questions, but let's start by looking at some of the general ideas when it comes to sleep. So you're always talking about 2 things, Kevin, when you're talking about sleep.
Yeah.
What are they?
Yeah, the two like big concepts to get when it comes to sleep is sleep pressure and sleep efficiency.
Okay.
So, put simply, sleep pressure is the force that gently pushes us into sleep. So, it's something internally generated, and it's
Hmm.
generated throughout the course of our day. And that pushes us into sleep at night.
Hmm.
Sleep efficiency is how well you sleep through the night. So,
Okay.
it's the quality of the sleep that you're getting as you're going through sleep cycles.
Okay.
There is another really big concept just to also throw out called negative sleep. So I hope to make sure I get to that too.
Okay.
But I'll
So
discuss that later.
sleep
Yeah.
pressure. Cool. So, okay, sleep pressure. Sorry, just to clarify. So that sounds a lot like tiredness. Is that as you go through the day, you get more and more
Yeah,
tired, and then you want to sleep. So is that the same
exactly.
sleep pressure as tiredness?
Yeah, so tiredness actually is a sign of sleep pressure increasing. Yeah,
Okay.
you could be tired but not ready to just fall asleep.
Hmm.
But eventually sleep pressure makes you feel so tired that you just fall asleep automatically. So
Okay.
what you want to do is really maximize sleep pressure,
Uh-huh.
but without falling into another term to throw out there, sleep
Hmm.
greed.
Hmm. Okay.
So I don't know if we should go to the questions or if you want to.
Yeah, let's go to the questions. That sounds like a great idea. So, okay, so then with those two concepts in mind, sleep pressure, sleep efficiency, then we'll kind of go through these questions and see
Yeah,
how they apply.
yeah.
So, the first question, how can I begin to regulate and improve sleep hygiene in this time of quarantine? Because there aren't specific deadlines at my job, I have the luxury, if you can call it that, to sleep in and fall asleep late.
Yeah. So they're uh, sleeping in and falling and going to bed late
Hmm.
end up worsening both sleep pressure and sleep efficiency.
Okay.
And that has to do with the normal cycles in our body of hormones,
Hmm.
particularly melatonin and cortisol. And a third thing is body temperature. So body temperature starts falling, say at around 9:30, 10 p.m. It reaches its lowest point at 2 a.m.
Hmm.
and then it starts rising. Melatonin levels are going to be spiking right around 10 to 11 p.m.
Uh-huh.
And it's the coinciding of the rising melatonin and the dropping body temperature that most increases sleep pressure. So
Uh-huh.
that there's a natural window to fall asleep. And maybe 10:30 is like right for most people, right at the middle of it.
Okay.
And then in the morning, body temperature starts rising, and then cortisol starts rising. And that's what makes us able to wake up in the morning.
Uh-huh.
So there are, I believe, and this will be a controversial statement, um, you know, I believe that we are not simply fixed as being a morning person or being a night owl. That these things are very shapeable. And many people had the experience of being night owls when they were young. And then once they get a job that requires them waking up at 5:30 or 6 in the
Hmm.
morning, then they become morning people.
Okay.
So, and anyone can learn to shift themselves to being a morning person. But so one thing is taking care then of regular sleep hours.
Hmm.
So if there's like one thing for sleep hygiene that is by far the most important, it's put your alarm far away from your bed so that in the morning you have to jump out of bed to go and turn
Yeah.
it off.
Yeah.
And then have it set at a set time every weekday the same. And
Uh-huh.
then not much more than an hour different on the weekends,
Okay. If that, yeah.
if that. And that's how you train yourself. So it is so important for to have a clear end time for sleep. And that's just like, and this gets into sleep efficiency. I'll just keep going back and forth between these,
Cool.
but it's because it's an important thing for sleep hygiene. I always ask people, have you ever been in a meeting that had no stop time? If there's no end time, the whole meeting just gets disorganized.
Right.
Well, your brain is like that. It needs stop times to know by when it has to get processes done. And sleep needs a stop time if it's going to proceed efficiently. So your brain has about 5 sleep cycles it needs to get in. Okay, and a sleep cycle is a 90-minute block of time where you go through stage 2, 3, 4 sleep, and then into REM, and then back to 2, 3, 4 into REM, and then, so that's how the sleep cycles progress. And what will happen is with a very fixed wake up time that is not moved, so not even a single snoozing ruins this, your
Hmm.
brain learns to take that as a deadline that's fixed. And it will
Right.
make sure it gets the 7 cycles in. The 5 cycles, which
Five.
should be
Okay.
about 7.5 hours.
Right.
So the cool thing also is that each sleep cycle is a little bit different because it has less of the restorative sleep called non-REM and more of REM sleep. And REM is where you have very vivid dreams. You're always dreaming all through, even in non-REM sleep, you're still dreaming. But those dreams are kind of more boring, everyday dreams.
Mm.
But the REM dreams are the vivid ones that have emotions. REM is where you're processing challenge. So your brain is preparing itself for challenges and for handling especially negative things. So handling threats.
Mm.
So that's why nightmares occur in REM dream.
Uh,
Well, the percentage of each sleep cycle that's REM increases with every cycle. Now, REM is more taxing on your brain than being awake. And once you've had 5 sleep cycles, which is 7.5 hours of sleep, the next one, that 6th cycle, is going to be potentially more REM than non-REM,
hmm.
which means that cycle actually doesn't add to your sleep quality at all. It takes
Hmm.
away from it. And then the next one is even worse, mostly REM.
Well,
So the more sleep cycles you go past 5, the more REM is like taking away the gains you could have gotten. And that's what we call negative sleep.
hmm.
So there's a sweet spot for sleep, for feeling awake and in a good mood in the day, and it's 5 sleep cycles. And then for most people, that's 7.5 hours or so.
Okay.
And you can tell, I know in my case, it's 7 hours and 15 minutes. So that's just what I always get. And then I
Yeah.
wake up right as my alarm's going off, and it's easy to jump out of bed. And I've probably been doing that for 30 years or something. And
Well,
it takes no effort to get out of bed. Initially, there is effort to get out of bed, like when you're first trying to change a pattern.
hmm.
But that's because people are assessing how ready do I feel to jump out of bed.
Hmm.
Well, you can't assess how well you slept right when you wake up. The time to assess that is at the end of the next day.
Mm.
So, Sharif, how do you
That's
feel
cool.
at the end of your days?
Yeah. Usually, well, at the end of my days, I am pretty tired, but I also have this weird thing where I just still want to do stuff.
Hmm.
I want to check my email. I want to put in the final touches on a
Yeah,
project.
yeah.
I
So
want
you have lots of
to
energy
read
at the end of the
something.
day.
Yeah.
And having energy at the end of the day is actually the sign that you're sleeping well at night.
Uh-huh. Okay,
So
cool. Good to know. Good to know.
you assess essentially how well you're sleeping by the end of the day. Now, assuming days are similar to each other in how
Hmm.
demanding they are.
Hmm.
So, but you can't assess how well you slept in the beginning of the day.
Hmm.
So, and it needs to become irrelevant. That it's just not something that's tracked and monitored.
Okay.
If people are too careful about sleep, they develop what I call sleep greed, which is they try to engineer their lives to maximize sleep.
Hmm.
Now, sleep thrives on benign neglect.
Hmm.
So you need to basically neglect it.
Hmm.
So you don't want to get over concerned about how well you're sleeping. So whenever I'm working with people, on sleep, this is especially true of people who have developed insomnia. So insomnia is like one of the main effects of sleep greed.
Okay.
People are so concerned about getting enough sleep that then they end up not getting it. So sometimes I say that insomnia is just a phobia of insomnia, that people are afraid of not falling asleep, and that fear keeps them awake.
Hmm.
And they
Is
keep
that
monitoring.
controversial?
I think rightly, if people heard it explained, they would all agree with it. I don't. I
Okay.
think the underlying dynamic is not super controversial. The more worried you are about actually attaining sleep, the more likely you are to be making an effort to fall asleep.
Okay.
Okay, so Sharif, I'll ask you, how long does it take you to fall asleep at night?
30 seconds tops.
Okay,
No,
there's
maybe.
a
Okay, that was an exaggeration. Sorry. A couple minutes.
couple minutes.
It's
Do
pretty
you make
easy.
an effort to fall asleep?
No,
No.
no.
What do you do?
I close my eyes and then I wake up in the morning.
Exactly. So people who make an effort to fall asleep stay awake because the effort wakes you up. Any effort that you have to fall asleep decreases your sleep pressure. So
Uh-huh.
you don't want to do anything that decreases sleep
Hmm.
pressure. The number one way people decrease sleep pressure is by making an effort to fall asleep, or
Hmm.
even in the daytime by worrying about how well they'll sleep, or by worrying about how tired they'll be the next day if they don't sleep well. But
Hmm.
tiredness is just sleep pressure. It's a good thing. And that will help you fall asleep the next night.
Right.
So even if you end up having, and everyone will have occasionally a bad night's sleep, and that just means the next night will be better. And in fact, you're not going to feel the effect of a bad night's sleep until the end of the next day. During the day, you'll almost always have way more energy than you would have predicted.
Hmm.
So other things like exercise, if anyone has sleep issues and they're not exercising, I would say, okay, first of all, exercise.
Extras. Okay.
Yeah. So daily exercise tends to produce better efficiency in sleep,
Okay.
and it increases sleep pressure. So it makes it easier to fall asleep if you do it earlier in the day, certainly not after 7 p.m.
Okay.
And so the other cool thing is that if you exercise before 7 a.m., it can make you a morning person.
Hmm.
And that's been shown in studies recently that people's sleep preference shifts if they get in intense aerobic exercise before 7 a.m.
Okay. This is kind of related to a live question, but
Uh,
we got a question. Is it a myth that some people need less or more sleep than others? How do you determine how much sleep you need?
yeah, so
Which is kind of, yeah, go ahead.
I generally take it as a myth,
Hmm.
but I'm willing to be proven wrong, but I'm hesitant if people say that they need 9 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
And so, or that they need, it's true that actually I know plenty of people that need 5 hours,
Hmm.
and that does happen.
Yeah.
And so there are people who simply need less sleep, and the proof is that they actually are very energetic and high
Uh-huh.
functioning in the daytime, and they can get by in 4 or 5 hours of
Huh.
sleep, but they don't feel run down, and they're not needing more sleep.
Yeah.
In psychiatry, they're called hyperthymic. So,
Okay.
so hyperthymia is generally one of these high performing conditions. It's not a bad thing to be hyperthymic.
Okay.
Um, the but way more common are people who say that they need,
Yeah.
8.5, 9 hours of sleep,
Yeah.
and often that's really a sign of that someone has depression.
Mm.
Okay, and there's a vicious cycle with depression because the quantity of REM you get acts as a depressant. So depressed
Mm.
people have more REM during the night. They go
Hmm.
into REM earlier and they have more REM. And then they also tend to sleep longer, which
Hmm.
means even more REM.
Hmm.
And so I remember having someone, this wasn't actually a patient, it was someone who called me on the phone, and from another city and said, I am unable to work, full day because I can work 4 hours a day because I need 14 hours of sleep. And he was very depressed and it had been going on for years. And
Hmm.
I said, look, you may not like this, but my first thing before we did anything else is I would want you to go a week only sleeping 7 hours. So, and he called back a week later and said, after doing that, he was able to work 9 to 5 again.
Wow.
That he actually held it. Fortunately, he went to like another therapist who corroborated exactly what I said and said you're sleeping way too much. But
Yeah.
this is the danger of negative sleep.
Hmm.
People should experiment with less sleep.
Yeah.
And especially if they're battling depression and low energy. So that would be a topic for another time, is what's happening with
Yeah.
depression. But just as
Yeah.
it relates to sleep, you end up having negative sleep.
Right. I can kind of relate to that because I remember thinking a while ago that I need more sleep because I would get like 8.5 hours and then I would still be tired.
Exactly.
And so
On
I'd think,
days when
well, I
people sleep
definitely need,
longer than they normally do, they tend to notice that they're in like a bad mood.
yeah.
You're just more irritable if you sleep long. And it's
Yeah.
because REM is associated with this negative processing bias,
Hmm.
so that you tend to be practicing
Hmm.
negative things in REM, and then it
Interesting.
lingers.
Interesting. So, okay, just to summarize real quick, some of the key takeaways: exercise in the morning, especially to
Yeah,
help you become a morning person. Keep regular hours. So wake up at the same time on weekdays,
yeah,
maybe up to an hour later on weekends,
exactly.
keeping it about between 7 and 8 hours so you
Yep,
don't do negative sleep. And
exactly.
then, extremely important, wake up, jump out of bed the moment your alarm first sounds. Are those
Precisely.
three
Real
good
quick,
rules
just to
for sleep?
mention coffee
Yeah.
is
Oh,
great.
coffee.
Coffee's
Okay.
great. Coffee helps us to work,
Uh-huh.
uh, but it shouldn't be had in the afternoon if it
Okay.
affects sleep.
Okay.
So people just need to see, when do they need to stop drinking coffee. There's some people that can't drink coffee after 11 a.m. Some people it's after 4 p.m. So people
Uh-huh.
need to learn, at what point does coffee in the afternoon cause my sleep pressure to be low when I'm going to bed? And then it keeps me
Uh-huh.
awake. But
Okay.
caffeine reduces sleep pressure.
Okay.
Alcohol increases sleep pressure momentarily, but then it decreases it. And that's a whole
Does it
other, I guess,
reduce
another topic.
efficiency?
And so it ends up helping you to fall asleep, but then once it gets into how alcohol is broken down into something that does the opposite. But
Mm-hmm.
then in the middle of the night, now you have more of this opposite chemical
Mm.
that actually wakes you up and worsens sleep.
Okay.
So a little bit of alcohol is okay, but more than a certain amount, you get too much of that breakdown product, and then sleep
Gotcha.
gets shot. So people
Gotcha.
have to take a lot of care with alcohol that they not. Everyone can learn for themselves how to increase sleep pressure. And we're probably going to need another session to talk about good practices of hygiene that
Uh-huh.
involve stopping work and stopping the day. So
Okay.
maybe next time we'll touch on that.
Maybe next time. Okay, but we're out of time for today. So, well, thanks so much for joining us. Well, thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Don't forget to check out OptimalWork.com for a set of online tools to help you engage challenge in your life. See you next week.